Moon Palace, Chapter 18. They arrived at the county hospital straight from the O'Hare airport. Mrs. Lee claimed that she was fine, but her son insisted that she went for a checkup, considering throughout the trip she was complaining about a chest pain. It did not take long for the doctors to act after reviewing Mrs. Lee's EKG and other tests. She had a minor heart attack and was in need of surgery to place a stent in one of the main arteries near her heart. Yuan and Mei-Ling quietly waited to hear the result, but hours has passed, and Yuan told her to go take care of the restaurant instead. "I'll give you a call as soon as I know something," he said. Everyone knew that Yuan was coming home today, so when Mei-Ling walked in alone, the waitstaff immediately inquired. "My mother-in-law is not well. She is in surgery for her heart," Mei-Ling explained. "What happened to her?" Peng asked with a frown. "She has been complaining of a chest pain throughout the trip." "Will she be all right?" Even Xu Ming, who has been keeping a distance from Mei-Ling, inquired as well. Yuan said he will call. It was fortunate that the place was busy, keeping everyone's mind off of the employer and his mother, as well as something else. Without mutual confirmation among the staff members, each has their own thoughts concerning the recent event and wonder how will it turn out. Even in a far distance, a slight rumor has already started in Chinatown's far corner, Mrs. Wang's place. Throughout the evening, Yuan made a couple of phone calls reporting his mother's condition and asked about the business. He informed his wife that his mother has been placed in the ICU, intense care unit, for recovering, and that he need a ride home to take a shower. "Come pick me up as soon as you close up the place." Mei-Ling hung up the phone right after and wondered when will be the right time to bring up their personal issue, and whether a huge fight would follow. A gentle knock on her office door. "Come in," she said. It was Lao Tong. "When is Ren coming back?" "His mother is sick. He's at the hospital. I'll know more when I pick him up later." Mei-Ling replied, and feeling a bit disappointed that it was not Wei Long at the door. Even though he has been at work every day, Mei-Ling has not spoken to him. There hasn't seemed to be any opportunity. Both of them were busy working, doing what they were supposed to do, but Mei-Ling wondered if she has been avoiding him, or the situation just happened to be that way for them both. In other words, the usual way. There were no eye contact, and when they passed by each other, Wei Long either looked down or straight ahead. Mei-Ling noticed through the corner of her eyes. At first she was glad, but after a few days, and after her thought of him at the airport, she questioned her feelings. Had she been missing him? But he seemed to be ignoring her. Has he changed his mind? Especially hearing her husband has come home. Moon Palace, Chapter 19. All was quiet except the echoes of her heels and a distant voice from a receptionist speaking over the phone. The tall ceiling of the lobby, the glassy stone flooring, and the paintings on the wall gave her a surreal impression that she was elsewhere instead of a hospital. Other than the visit earlier of the day, it has been many years since Mei-Ling visited the place, where she had come in with someone and had come out alone. She winced at the thought that creeped in her head just now. It was a few flights of stairs before she got to the level where Yuan's mother was staying. Why didn't she take the elevator? Maybe she just wanted to prolong the moment before facing her and her son. She found the room and entered. Yuan, his aunt, and uncle were there by his mother's side. The two men were quietly listening to the women chatting about. But as soon as Mrs. Li saw Mei Ling, she stopped and said, "Mei Ling, you're here." "Ma," Mei Ling said, "how are you feeling?" "I'm fine. Everything's fine," she grinned, which made her daughter-in-law rather uncomfortable. She could not recall when was the last time Yuan's mother greeted her in such a friendly manner. Yuan gave Mei Ling a slight grin as well, and so did Uncle Lu and Auntie Jen. The auntie, perhaps being courteous, said to Mrs. Li that they're going to the cafeteria to get something and would be back soon. As they walked out, Yuan got out of the chair, giving the impression that he was leaving as well. He assured his mother that he will be back tomorrow morning. "Oh, don't worry about me," said Mrs. Li. "I'll be fine. Y'all making such a fuss," she farewelled with a grin. Yuan nodded, apparently weary, and looked to Mei Ling. "Ready?" Before his wife could reply, Mrs. Li waved. "Just a moment." She pulled herself up a bit in her bed. "Son, why don't you wait outside? I need to talk to Mei Ling for a moment." Yuan looked at his mother for a few seconds, then rubbed the back of his neck while his lips twitched slightly. He asked his wife for the car key and stated that he will pull the car out front. "Could you close the door?" asked Mrs. Li. "Sure." Mei Ling quietly pushed the doorknob, and as she turned towards the bed, she was gestured to sit next to it. "How's the restaurant doing?" "The business is doing fine. It was busy today." "Oh, good, good," Mrs. Li grinned. "I am so glad. You know, I have been feeling guilty about pulling Yuan away." Mei Ling looking puzzled, wondered what was this about as Mrs. Li reached over and grabbed her hand and gently placed it on the edge of the bed and covered it with hers. Her face turned serious and almost seemed sympathetic. She quietly said, "Mei Ling, you have suffered." Mei Ling looked at her mother-in-law, and the touch of her hand felt more like a sting than a soft comfort. She pulled her hand back and grabbed onto her purse instead. "I know," she continued. "I am so sorry for what happened. Yuan told me everything." "Told you what?" Mei Ling thought. She could not bring herself to ask her what she meant. "I know this is between you and my son, but I am involved too. I mean, with the way things are going, this is a blessing, not a curse." Mei Ling was becoming frustrated, not only because she knew as well, but she was putting a positive spin. Why? Perhaps Mrs. Li was seeing something on her face. She leaned back on her bed and sighed. "Mainly what I'm really trying to say is, please forgive him. He did not do it intentionally." By now, Mei Ling was gripping the purse even tighter, and her face was flushed. Mei Ling was trying very hard to not react. She knew if she did, it would be disrespectful. At least that part she knew how to play. She took a deep breath and nodded. "I think Yuan is out front waiting for me." "All right," said Mrs. Li. "Tread slowly and come back to visit me when you get a chance." An usual elderly gesture for "see you later." But as Mei Ling was about to walk out the door, Mrs. Li added, "Don't forget, we are family. Remember your father?"